We're on Newman Road where the gym is. Obviously, there's so many stories on this street. You know, I was watching a bit of documentary footage of your dad speaking to a kid who was in the National Front.
The guy was a guy called, what's his name? Anthony O'Brien. And he was a bit of a skelly around these parts. He lived over the other side on an estate on 5 Street and come from quite a big family. And before that clip, he was on a scheme with my dad. My dad ran what they call the Youth Opportunities Programme. He worked for a company who did that. That was before they had the YTS. So he'd been on this scheme with Brendan for a few years, and Brendan tried to get him back on the straight and narrow. And he pulled up one day at the side of the road as Brendan was sweeping the streets, and he had a conversation. That conversation took place about here, and just over there on the where those flats are was a set of garages, and it had an NF logo sprayed onto it. And I remember it was like it'd been on for years and years and years, and nobody paid it any attention. So they'd set up a National Front organisation, and it's the lodge that Brendan's referring to was the Winkerbank Hotel. So they kind of set up in the Winkerbank Hotel up there, and you know, put the world to rights. And the leader of it, or the guy who was in charge of it, ironically, was actually going out with a black girl. And I'm not sure whether Brendan had a conversation with the guy or with Anthony, and said, well, you know, the guy who's running the organisation is going back. He's going out with a black girl. And Anthony said, so Brendan said, well, what's going to happen, you know, if you get into power and the National Front get into power, what's going to happen? He went, well, she's going to have to go back, Brendan. And Brendan kind of laughed and said to him, well, back to where? Well, you know, back to where she came from. He goes, well, she was born in England. He says, so, you know, where can she go back? Well, you know, wherever her parents came from, like Jamaica or whatever. And very shortly afterwards, they kind of disbanded, and the logo got scrubbed off. And there was never really, you know, any racism around Winkerbank. There was very, very few black people. And I can remember when I was a kid, maybe 8 or 9, maybe 10, and obviously Nazim moved into the shop up the road. His dad was obviously an Arab. And I think the only incident, how it actually all started with Naz coming to the gym is because across from Naz's shop, it's not there now, the houses now, it was a community centre, like a mobile community centre. And one night they'd had a disco, and some kids had come out, and maybe about 9:30 at night, and put all the windows through on Naz's shop. So his dad brought his lads down to the gym in anticipation of the kids getting bullied or, you know, racial abuse or whatever, anything else. And that's how kind of the journey of Naz started. Before they actually came down to the gym, you know, Brendan never had a car, so he catched the bus most places, and he pulled up outside of the bus stops outside of the local school, which is just like across from Naz's shop. And this is where the story started, where Brendan looked down off the top deck of the bus into the schoolyard. It was playtime, and he saw this little Arab kid, you know, whether he was playing tig or tag or whatever, fencing off 4 kids trying to grab hold of him, and never really thought anything about it. And maybe a couple of months later, or maybe weeks later, that's when his dad brought him into the gym. So, you know, that's the story of how Nazim Hamid came to the gym, and every day from 7 years old, he'd walk from that shop down to the gym, 5-minute walk. He'd be the first one in, and he'd be the last one out. And that's how it was for years and years. And then in the evening, after training, he'd probably knock on Brendan's door, and they'd go for a walk, an hour's walk, and Brendan would talk about boxing, where Naz's career was going to go. So every spare minute that Brendan got, Naz kind of monopolised it. His time, got his education, his experience, and got all the knowledge.
He's been great for me. He's educated me in a way. Social skills, life skills. So I've been with him everywhere. I've learnt a very lot. He's been a great influence.
You see all these flats now, they're all built. This was all terraced houses up the way, all the way up to the school. And as time went on, they knocked them down, built the flats, built these houses, but they're all terraced from the top to the bottom. Brendan was actually worked on here as a labourer, hod carrier. He was also the foreman. He was also the night watchman. And yeah, a long time ago. So that's Naz's shop. He started out as obviously houses, and it's two houses together, but it's been painted yellow. It's a bit of an eyesore now for when they had the Tour de France leg of Britain a few years ago, so they painted it yellow. And you can see where there's that kind of pink red square. That was a billboard. And when Naz started making it in boxing, maybe it was about 2021, he got what did he get? He got an offer off Audi, and they were bringing out a new car. It could have been the Audi A4, and they had Naz stood with his leopard skin shorts on against this new Audi what they were releasing, and there was a billboard up there with Naz against the car, and these billboards went all over the place. And it was probably the first time you'd ever seen a boxer being associated with a high branded product like Audi. This is Naz's shop. It looked nothing like this. It looked nothing like this back in the day. And we used to come up here in the morning when we were kids, go into this shop, get a bag full of sweets, and we'd go down this gennel and walk to the comprehensive school. So this was a place where his dad had the shop and converted it into two houses. They knocked it in together. They had 9 in the family, and they all had to do a stint in the shop. His older sister Mona, obviously she was the main one, the oldest sister. His dad was always in here. So every morning we come to school as kids, maybe 10 or 11 or 12 at the time. Naz probably weren't even born, I was really young. And we'd get fueled up on sugar and get to school. Actually, I went in the other week. Just coming in here, mate, because apparently this used to be the shop belonging to Nazim Hamid, yeah? I don't even know who Nazim Hamid is. So this is the shop. But look, this was the shop, the counter was there, that the door to the house went through there. So you come into the shop and his dad had come out, and there's a counter here. It was just all the way down, and it's, you know, it's the same dimensions, just set out different. Across here, where these houses are, is where the community centre was. It was a mobile community centre, and every Friday, every month, they'd have a kids disco on a certain age group, and that's when the kids came out and put the windows through. There's no windows there now. That's the school that Naz went to. Winkerbank, that's the school I went to. So everything was pretty close by. This is the school I went to, all my family went to, Naz went to, Naz's brothers and sisters went to. Now you can see the bus stops there, but when we were younger, the bus pulled up just there outside the gate. There was no zebra crossing here. The bus stopped here. Brendan was on the top deck and he looked down here and you could see Naz in this corner. There's another gate there, and Naz was in the corner whether he was playing tig or these kids were trying to grab hold of him, and he's fencing 3 or 4 off at the time. And Brendan was on up the road to a place called Firth Park, which was a shopping area.
I saw him in the schoolyard. You know, when people laugh at me, I was on the bus and I see this little kid and those 3 kids sitting about him, and he couldn't hit him. A few seconds I'm watching and I think to myself, bloody hell, he can fight, he can move.
Yeah, so this is where I came as a kid. From 5 years old, I can remember my first day of school, walking from here up to that door. My mother took me up The teacher kept me talking, and I turned around and my mother had disappeared. And that was my first day at school. And I had so many fights in this schoolyard. There's a yard up there, so many fights in that place. And I think I left this school when I was, I don't know, 8 or 9. So I was here for 4 years. Probably the best days of your life. Back in the day, this area here and this driveway was the entrance actually to my granddad's farm, and it was all these houses here. And at a certain point, I forget what year it was, it might be in the 60s, the council compulsory purchased it, knocked it all down and built the houses on. And this house here, this is where I lived as a kid from, probably been about 7 or 8 years old, maybe. I think I moved here maybe in 75, 76. And the house was only half the size. So the left-hand side of the house was what the house was. And the driveway was a garden from the front wall all the way up to the house. The gate to the house originally was here. So the gate was here. This is where we used to go up. There's a path all the way up to the house here, and there was a wall. The rest of it, all this was filled with soil. There's a big high wall here. And eventually, the right-hand side of the house, one day, Brendan had a load of bricks tipped over that side. This is what you're doing, is building an extension. And in a period of maybe 4 or 5 months, he built the right-hand side of the house using bricklayers and joiners, everybody off that building site. He was the foreman. They come at the weekends and they build the house. And how he did it, I don't think he actually paid them. The kids had come and their kids had come and trained in the boxing club, and Brendan said, I'll train your kids, you work on the house. So anybody who was interested in boxing, if they were a bricklayer, a carpenter, a roof, whatever, basically, he got that side of the house built for nothing. Once he did, he started to dig the garden out one side. And he created a driveway about here, halfway down. Kept the wall on that side of the garden. We had a driveway, and there's a garage under that house, not this front bit, there was no garage. So he dug it out. And then one year, he decided, it was about 1976, we had a drought in 1976, it was red hot. And we got a driveway, this path was blocked off, there was some stairs up. And he decided he was gonna dig the garden out. And he kept telling us he was gonna build a swimming pool in this side of the garden. He says, but don't tell anybody, don't tell your friends. We're gonna, it's red hot, we're gonna have more droughts. I've been reading in the papers, we're gonna get a global warming, and we're gonna build a swimming pool, but don't tell your friends. And we started digging the soil out, and we get the wheelbarrows, we chuck it over the wall, and we'd wheel it and we'd fill over there, around the back of the church. The soil went everywhere. Every weekend, every school holiday, we'd be doing work, and then we'd tell us friends, and they said, what are you doing? We say, you're not to say anything, but Brendan's going to build a swimming pool, but we're not to tell anybody because, it's going to be a lot of hard work and we don't want anybody else using it. So all of a sudden, as friends had started joining in to help. So every holiday, every weekend, if Brendan was about, we'd be digging soil and tipping it, and it might have took us maybe 2 or 3 years to clear the soil. And all the kids in Winterbank, thought they're going to be involved in getting into this swimming pool, so they come round and help us. And it kept us occupied through the school holidays, the weekends. And then we got a little bit older, and I thought to myself, I said to my dad, I know a quicker way we can get this. Why don't we get one of the mechanical diggers and get it done quicker? And he kind of smiled. And it was only then that I realised that for 2 or 3 years, he kind of convinced us I had to dig all this soil out for free. Keep us out of trouble in the school holidays, keep the kids from Winterbank out of trouble, because everybody's involved in this project in how to empty this garden. We never did get the swimming pool, but it was a motivating factor why we did it. And eventually, when he got it all dug out, he built this garage, and that garage has got about 4 RSJs in, and he built it just in case anything happened to that boxing club. It's set up to hold 4 or 5 bags in there. It can actually be a gym, it's big enough. You can't have a ring in it. And he was always second guessing, what if? And his big concern were whether, if anything happened to that, or it was, you know, you couldn't use it, or for whatever reason, you know, he got another facility to do it. But he always had a project for the kids in Winterbank in the holidays. It kept everybody busy. You know, we had 1 week's holiday a year. We went to a caravan with his grandparents. But the rest of the time, you know, we were doing work around Winterbank. If you weren't sweeping the road, you were digging a project out, you were helping the old people, there was always some, or you were tidying up the church or cutting the grass. Everybody else kept engaged all the time, all the way through. So, you know, that's how it worked out. And, you know, when my father died, the house was sold. And at some point, he'll probably get a blue plaque on it, Brendan Ingle, train or whatever, you know, that'll be what it is. But it holds a lot of great memories. This is the house where Harold Graham stayed with us when he was 18-year-old, when he came from Nottingham to Sheffield, and he spent 4 or 5 years in this house. And every morning we'd be about 5:30 going for a run. And yeah, so it's got a lot of memories, that place. So this was probably the first bag in the gym, because it was the shortest span across to put a beam in to hang a bag off, because the ceiling is actually a suspended ceiling. The ceiling goes much higher. All these beams, 1, 2, 3, 4, the RSJs across the gym were all put in one by Brendan and boxers and people at the time, and they went in maybe every couple of years. I can remember coming here maybe when I was probably 10. I think this gym started 1960. So maybe 1974, 75 is the earliest recollections I can have. It was very dark and dank. There was no boards on the wall. It was just brickwork. But that was one of the first bags. This bag is what we call the heavy bag. It's solid. It's absolutely solid, and it's got sand in it, split peas, dried corn, lentils. It's a bit softer at the top. But every few years we take them down and crack the bag to make it softer. But one of these bags, not this one, we had them all set up on, there's two there, the yellow and the red bag. So the yellow bag is just slightly softer than the red bag. And kids used to come in through this door, and we'd have a bag here and a softer bag there, and they'd come in and they'd go, you know, the kids who didn't know the gym, they'd come in and they'd see the bags, and the first thing is like, give the bag a whack, and they'd like tap the bag, and then they see this bag here, and they'd, you know, give that a bag, then think, right, this is going to get it, and they walk up to this yellow bag, and I've seen it so many times, they walk up and they go, whack, and they'd hit the bag, and all of a sudden realise how hard it was. And you can see the look on the face that something bad's happened, and I think in all the years, 3 kids probably did that and broke their hands. But that bag's solid now. This bag, and that one in particular, and this is why you look at situations, how boxing's changed with how training methods are, and why some things in life are necessary or in training are not necessary. The way Nazim Hamid, probably even Junior Witter, Johnny Nelson, certain fighters, even Kell Brook, developed natural punch power. They didn't lift weights. There was no such thing as S&C. These are the bags. Hitting these bags from 7 and 8 years old with bag mitts on, combination punching. This is solid, this bag. Daily punching of this bag, positioning the feet, bending off the shots, getting the angles. That's where the punch power is developed. You're never going to develop punch power from lifting weights. And that's why when I see so many boxers putting 50% of effort into S&C, well, strength and conditioning. Conditioning is running. Strength is lifting weights, that's what that is. Well, the conditioning gets done in the gym. Nazim Hamid never lifted a weight in his life. Neither did Kell Brook till a certain point in his career, when Kell Brook probably started lifting weights at 23. But before that, he could punch. So the punch power was purely created on these heavy bags. And when you could punch these bags naturally at a certain, you know, for a certain period of time, then Brendan would get maybe a 1 kilogram or a 500 gram weight, little tube, put in the hands, and they use that. Then it'd be a slightly heavier one. The dumbbells have gone now. I can remember doing my blows with Harold Graham, having dumbbells in my hand, hitting the bags and pushing off. So that's where the power was created. So when I see, you know, boxers thinking they're going to improve punch power by lifting weights, well, I kind of have to sometimes look at that theory and think it's all wrong, because you look at the great punchers of the past, never lifted weights. Look at, you know, George Foreman. Look at Fraser, never lifted weights. And all you need is that kind of strength. And I've lifted weights with kids. It's good for certain things. It's good for conditioning your body to a certain degree. But in all the time Kell Brook ever did S&C, it never improved his punch power. The reason Naseem Hamed, you know, had that power as well, because he had massive legs, but he never ran. He did rounds and rounds of sparring in that exact ring, did his footwork, did circuit work. And I remember the back end of his career when I trained him for Wayne McCulloch, we had a little circuit where we'd do 5 pull-ups, 5 press-ups, 5 times. And he did it, but the next day he came in the gym holding himself and went, "You don't know what you're doing, you. I can't straighten my arms," because he wasn't used to that kind of exercise. But if he hit you, you'd know about it. He was a very dangerous puncher. So there's different types of strength. The oldest thing in this gym is this particular part here, because I think this was part of a fireplace. This was actually where kids used to learn. And the next oldest thing is this beam. That's kind of what went in the first thing. So, yeah, it's a very old building. It'll be interesting watching this.
Half educated, Paddy, and I've got 20 English fellas working for me, so I'm working for them. Come on, pick it up, Dennis. You're dropping your hands.